keep finding ways that we're helping partners finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work. Welcome to Academy Live.
Welcome back to Academy Live. We hope everyone had a fantastic holiday weekend. Bessie's off today, but Rex and I will be talking to our guest, Paul Blake. He's going to be talking with us today about leadership and building the next generation of leaders. I have the privilege of knowing Paul. I've known him for a few years now, and looking forward to his insights as we discuss this topic that I think is very relevant to a lot of our partners. And then a little later in the show, we're going to talk about peer groups as well. But let's jump right in and let's welcome Paul and Rex. Hey, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul Blake. I am the director of. I'm the director of services and support at CyberStreams.
Tell us about you.
I'm the director of services and support at CyberStreams up in Seattle. We have about 18 employees. CyberStreams has been around for about 20 years, and over the last 5 years, I've been a member of the leadership team and helped to grow this company from, I think, about $1.8 million a year to 4.3 over those 5 years, and have been having a great time here.
Well, Paul, I know that you didn't start at CyberStreams as a leader. You didn't start in the position you're at. So I would love for you to give us a little bit of a background, a little bit of your origin story on what did you start with? What was your first role at the company, and kind of how did you progress to where you're at now?
Absolutely. So I've been with CyberStreams for about 6 years now. When I started here, it was under different ownership. And the owners at that time, or the owner rather, was absentee. Things were not going well. Morale was low. And I wasn't feeling good about my job. And then the two new owners bought us out, David Henderson and Matt Cordell. And when that happened, David noticed that I was not having a good time. And he sat me down and had a very difficult conversation with me. Basically, he kicked my butt and told me that I need to shape up or ship out effectively. And when that happened, I took it seriously and I listened. And the first thing he had me do was to plan a party. A company gathering. He wanted to get a sense of where my skills were in terms of that, right? Because planning a party requires a lot of different skills. And so we worked on that, and he was impressed. Over time, I continued to show leadership skills, and he promoted me to help desk lead. And then from there, I had heard somewhere a long time ago that one of the best ways to seek a promotion is to continually take things off of the plate of your boss to free up time for them. And so I started doing that. I put together a new meeting within our organization called the Team Leads Meeting, where I gathered non-owners that were all in leadership positions of some kind into one place. And our whole goal was to solve problems before they ever made it to the owners, just to stop it right there. And once I did that, then I was promoted to service manager. And then shortly after that to director of services and support, where I have taken over all of service delivery at CyberStreams, which includes the help desk, engineering, projects, dispatch, account management, and so on.
Paul, is there anything you miss as you've worked your way into a leadership position and out of a technical role?
Honestly, no. I think that I found that leadership it feels like a calling of mine. I'm passionate about this. I want to learn all the time and learn more. I've always been a people person. I've always been somebody that wants to help and support the people around me. And so, no, I don't really miss the technical side of my role, though I know several service managers tend to as they get promoted, but that wasn't really my trajectory.
I definitely personally missed it. But one of the things that drove me as I personally moved more into leadership was this realization that everything I learned as a tech has kind of a useful shelf life of 3, maybe 5 years. But everything I learned as being a leader really has a shelf life for a lifetime, right? So it just continually compounds on itself and you get better and better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've noticed all the interactions, my day-to-day interactions with people, my relationships have all been getting better and better as I've become a better leader. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
So I like that transition for you and you taking that on. But what were some of the challenges you kind of experienced in that transition? That's something we talk about a lot. It comes up in peer groups as people or owners building a team. You felt like it kind of a natural calling, but what are some things that were kind of challenging in this path to becoming a leader?
First of all, was getting over what is it called? Uh, Imposter syndrome. That was the first thing, and I know everybody suffers from that, but it's huge, right? And it never really goes away. When I start to feel more confident, that's when I start questioning myself, and that was one of the big challenges. Another is that you wouldn't know this from if you know who I am socially, but in a professional capacity, I don't talk much in meetings. I tend to sit back and absorb what's going on, and it can be challenging at times. When there's more stronger personalities in the room or in the meeting, and trying to break through those can be tough. It took a lot of practice, really, in just speaking up and making sure I'm heard. Those were the major challenges. Another one that I had was that the vast majority of the people that report to me now, well, at the time, I should say, when I was promoted, had been with the company much longer than I had. One of them had been there for 10 years longer than I had, and now he's reporting to me, and that was a challenge. But really, it was just about proving myself, proving to him that I was there to support him and help the business be successful. And we got past that.
That's pretty it Caesar seems one of the things I'm excited about this conversation today with you is to kind of get your perspective on that, because we do hear those kind of things a lot as far as sometimes it's age. You have people older than you or more experienced in some areas, more technical, and kind of establishing that. And Rex, I'll kind of ask you, you've been through a lot of leadership transitions and roles and developing people. You're letting go of that tech stuff, but what about you and your experiences with developing yourself as a leader in your business?
I was just thinking about it. Something Paul said made me think about that our industry's relatively young as industries go, right? If you look at accounting firms or law firms, right, they're hundreds of years old. But IT really didn't really get going until late mid 80s, maybe early 90s is when our industry really kind of grew up as an industry. So like if you look at PAX 8, like it's a crazy number. It's like 75 or 80% of the people in PAX 8 are in the highest leadership position they've ever been in their careers. But I think the same is true across the entire IT services industry. So Paul, as you were talking about imposter syndrome, I think like 80% of our industry wonders if they're in the place that they belong. So you're in good company.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing I like to say is that I never want to be the smartest person in the room. And if I ever am the smartest person in the room, then I'm probably in the wrong room. And so, imposter syndrome, while it can be a hindrance at times, it can also be a tool to help to motivate you to learn and to grow and to continually do better.
So how would you describe yourself as a leader?
I'm very trusting and very vulnerable. I'm honest. I don't beat around the bush at all. I just go straight to the heart of the matter and address feedback as needed. I believe that I'm a good listener and I'm very empathetic, and I think that helps quite a bit, especially when it comes to trying to work with your team to have them adapt to new processes and changes within their role to show them that you understand the frustrations and such. So I think that's the type of leader that I am. I'm a listener. I listen twice as much as I talk oftentimes. I'm vulnerable, like I said. I do try to lead from ahead as much as I can, right? Not from behind. And so, yeah, that's how I would describe myself as a leader.
So we have a core value within Academy that says we say what we think professionally and tactfully, regardless of the impact on our revenue. Meaning, when we're in a peer group facilitation or any kind of a mentoring role or a coaching role, and there's something we feel like we need to say, even if it's to an owner or the lead service executive, that they're the problem or they need to adjust something to get out of the way. Even if we think that they might fire us because we tell them what we believe is the truth, we have to say it professionally and tactfully. And so I think it's important you said that you listen more, but I think it's equally important that when there's something hard to be said, that you have really the guts to say it.
100%, especially as you said, when you're leading up, right? That can be challenging. I mentioned earlier that I had some struggles with strong personalities, and oftentimes owners of businesses tend to have very strong personalities and can be tough to be heard, especially, Rex, to your point of providing that critical feedback to somebody that has a stronger personality than you do. I think part of that just it requires you to build a relationship around that vulnerability, around being honest with each other and sharing, the ups and downs of what's going on. One thing that we do during our meetings at the start is we follow EOS, so we do segue. Sorry, and we would always share something positive in our personal life, and we try to be very genuine about that. And I think that helps to build that relationship and that trust between team members.
You talked about trust, being a trusting person, but I mean, how do you establish, like, what are some things that you do to both give trust to, people that report to you or that you report to, but how do you also kind of establish that in your culture? What does that kind of look like?
I think part of showing people that you trust them is getting out of their way, allowing them to fail to some degree, as long as you're there to help pick up the pieces or it's not too critical, right? It shows that you gave them the leeway to take it all the way to that point, and then if they do fail, that you're not mad about it. It was a lesson learned, and we can move on now, right? I think that builds a lot of trust in the people that report to you. And as far as your peers and the people that you report to, I think it's just being genuine, telling people, doing what you say you're going to do, following through, making sure that they know that they can rely on you as a resource and as a peer, as a leader, all of those things. I think that's all very important.
I've got a chart that talks about the good leader and the bad boss, and in the bad boss category is blame, blame for hindsight, right? Like, hey, I can't believe you did that. It's so stupid. I could have seen that coming, right? I see that over and over and over where, the great leader, when a bad thing happens, it's like they just approach it completely different. It's like, okay, don't like that happened, but what can we learn from it so it doesn't happen again? And how do we put that in motion? And, from the same circumstance, there's 280-degree reactions from a leader. And I tell you, the great leaders I've worked for all are in that second category. What can we learn to do differently? Any thoughts on that?
Well, just that, it's one of those things where you don't necessarily know what you're doing wrong if you don't know what you're doing wrong, right? So sometimes you have to let people make mistakes. And I think it's important that you're not setting them up for failure. You're setting them up for success by way of them learning from it and making sure that they understand that going into it. So there's not a huge amount of disappointment when they do end up, making a mistake or failing in some way. I think that's super important to make sure that their expectations are set and that they're not too hard themselves on the other end, right? You can go to them and say, hey, there's a chance that this isn't going to work out the way that you think it is, and that's okay, right? If that happens, here's our contingency plan and how we're going to move forward.
There's so many I get excited about this topic because I see this play out a lot, and I see the companies that really kind of succeed in transition maybe a little quicker to establishing their leadership team, show a little bit more growth and maturity in that. I have a lot of these characteristics, the trust, the vulnerability, and I think we've got a great, Rex, from C-Level and PAX 8 Academy coaching, we have this learning curve. And I think sometimes as owners, when we hand something off, we kind of have these expectations. And to know with that learning curve, you have somebody that you're handing somebody to, there may be a dip in quality. And like Rex said, bad boss, not step in and take over or, blame somebody, but to coach them through that. Can you give any examples or talk a little bit about how you maybe have helped people on your team through that learning curve, either to build trust or let them take something on, knowing there may be a little bit of the dip in quality or them doing it, a little bit their way?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's important to set them up for success, right? You have to start at the beginning. And one thing, if I'm handing a task off to one of my staff that I'm not confident that they're going to be able to complete, I set that expectation up front, right? Hey, I want you to try this. It's going to be difficult, but here, the first thing I'd like you to do for me is to go do some discovery, figure out what's going on, and write up a plan. Come back to me with that plan, and let's talk about it. Let's look over it together, and then see where any risks are that may exist within that plan, and talk about what we can do to mitigate those or to remediate them, right? However you would handle that. And then have them go execute and make sure that you're there and available if they need assistance, if they have any questions or if they're feeling a little beat up during that process. And then just make sure you're checking in with them regularly, right? Follow up with them, check to make sure they have all the tools they need, they have all the resources they need, they have the time that they need. That's important, especially in our industry. And then just constant communication just to make sure that they know you're there to help them. And then at the end of it, talk about the lesson learned, right? How can we make sure this doesn't happen again in the future? Let's go back and talk about the plan that we had written and where did that fail? Where did that go wrong? Or did it? Did it go exactly as we thought it was going to? And we knew this was going to be a risk and it happened anyway? Okay, that's fine. Great, perfect. So that's one of the easiest ways, in my opinion, to help somebody through and to learn and trust in themselves more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. There's a great,
Such
I love delegate, not abdicate. And that's delegation is a skill. Like I'm sure Rex, I'm sure you and Paula both have experienced that. I see that sometimes where somebody thinks they're delegating a task, but they're really kind of abdicating, here, just go do this. I'm full, versus setting somebody up for success and like walking them through it. Rex, I'm sure you've experienced or seen people struggle with that.
I talked a couple of shows ago. I talked about the Pass the Hat campaign, right? Like, think of something that you shouldn't be doing. Train somebody on how to do that, right? Remember, there's 5 phases: understand the best practice, document, train, implement, and then measure. But when you're delegating, it involves sort of those 4 steps of learning: tell them, show them, help them, watch them. Right? Tell them and show them the teacher's doing the work, and then you hand it off. And this is when that quality curve kicks in that you were talking about, right? Help them and watch them. They're doing the work, and it's not going to be at the same quality level who's ever already been doing it. But you got to take it back, and I'll do it. You're terrible at doing it. You'll never do it again, right? Take the other longer, harder path of teaching and coaching and helping them do it to your standards. And in the long run, you'll have multiple people able to do whatever it is. And that's a sign of a great leader, is being willing to accept kind of a little bit of consequences of the dip in the quality curve to get the long range outcome of another great person doing whatever it is that needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And delegation requires accountability to be effective, and accountability is a 2-way street. You don't hold somebody accountable, right? You're holding each other accountable. If I ask somebody to go do something and then I never follow up with them afterwards, I failed at that point, not them necessarily.
You said I failed.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, you said I failed, and I'm thinking about the book Good to Great, which I think is on Rex's shelf back there. But it's they talked about one of the qualities they found in the good to great leaders is that they take credit for failure with their team and they give credit for success.
No, I just do it the other way around.
Well, that would be the good stayed good leaders, not the good to great leaders.
Yeah. Right, yeah, there we go.
I picked that up. And that
Take credit for
extreme
failure,
ownership.
Give credit for success.
Yeah. I like that, as a lead, you take that ownership. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, and it helps to have owners or, people that I report to that happen to be great leaders as well, because they recognize when I'm doing that. They can see that, oh, you're giving credit to your team, but you were instrumental in this, so you deserve some credit as well. That helps and just makes me feel great. So
Yeah. And motivating that ownership that people, that either you're reporting to, you're taking that ownership for them, and that people that report to you are taking that ownership for their doing it makes it a lot easier. You said something earlier. I want to kind of go back and tap into. You talked about leading from the front rather than from behind. Can you talk about that a little bit? What does that mean?
this one can be a little tough for me because I'm not a technical person anymore. It's been way too long. So it's not something where I can be leading by example from a technical perspective. But when it comes to, when I'm asking them to do things like documentation and accountability and timesheets and things like that, you want to make sure that you're doing those things. You're showing them why it's important. You're not just telling them to do it because I said so, right? There's a very good reason for it. And I'm going to show you why myself by doing it. I think that's one of the more important things that you can do as a leader, because nobody likes to see the type of manager who just sits in their office and never does anything. He just tells everybody what to do, right? You're a part of that team ultimately, and you should be contributing and helping them in those ways also.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a little bit of leading from behind, though, is kind of what you mentioned, where you took it upon yourself to set up a team lead meeting, right? So that the team could solve problems. And I don't know that I consider that leading from the front. I think I more consider that leading from the back, though.
Mm.
It's interesting. Yeah, for me, I was trying to, you could view it as leading from the front, I guess, in a way of showing that, we can solve our own problems as individuals. We can take the reins and really get out there in front of an issue. And before anybody recognizes it's a problem, we've already addressed it and are taking care of it. And that's not just within the team leads itself, but just coordinating the team leads meeting on its own, right? Taking that initiative and that proactive approach towards problem solving.
Um, so I want to talk a little bit more about, you said that you took some initiative to move into a leadership role. Did you find with two strong personalities as owners in the company that you kind of had to, push your way in there? Like you really took a lot of initiative to create the job you wanted. Talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did take a lot of initiative, but at the same time, Matt and David were both just great about um, recognizing what I was trying to do and supporting me and helping me get there, right? So I didn't necessarily have a battle in that way, but in terms of, being, like I mentioned earlier, being heard, and especially during meetings when I'm the type of person who sits back and doesn't talk as much, it took me a long time to build up that confidence. That imposter syndrome sat over my head in all of those meetings where if I ever said anything, I was worried, they were going to bounce back and say, no, that's a stupid idea. Of course, they wouldn't do that, but that was sitting in the back of my head. And honestly, it probably took me a couple years longer than I expected it to for me to get past that, to be able to speak up to them and to provide my feedback and be a little more assertive in those meetings when I need to be. And it's definitely changed the nature of the relationship. And I will say that there was a transitionary period where both of them probably felt like I was being obstinate or maybe even a little confrontational when really I was just trying to flex that muscle. And once we got past that transition, then I feel like our relationships are significantly better as a result. I can be more open and honest. When the owners call me now, it's more of a conversation than it is them talking at me, which is hugely helpful when it comes to making decisions and just being a leader in the organization.
Well, I think being able to establish, we'll talk about a little bit more about accountability in a minute, I think, but that trust of, I've seen environments that get toxic when it's not okay to fail, when there is so much critical response to mistakes, or not allowing people to make a mistake, and again putting the time and effort to be there to guide them through how they would do something. Like, I love what you described about your steps of handing off, setting them up for success, but it takes a lot more work. What I want to ask you about, Paul, is I know in my own journey, it was very difficult for me to recognize that it was my role to lead, which takes a lot of time and effort. A lot of times I associated what I need to do with the technical or the tactical or getting things done, which, you always don't mind helping. But how did you get to the point of really saying, no, I don't need to step in and do that. I need to let go of these. My job, my role is to, you know, to manage, to lead, to oversee, to talk strategy, to coach, to guide. How did you kind of adopt that and change some of your own habits or the way you establish your time and your identity as a leader?
The secret to that is overwhelming laziness, not wanting to do anything myself. I'm kidding again.
Right.
The real answer is that I kind of had to forget everything I knew about being a technician and being an engineer in order to move into a leadership position for exactly the reasons you stated. I recognized that those were going to be a problem pretty early on just by way of the people that were around me. And, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but peer groups were instrumental in that, in understanding my role and the things that I need to do to break myself away from some of those issues, or not issues, those types of tasks that should be delegated or handed off to somebody else so that I can focus on the more strategy side of the organization. And so, like I said, it was really just about setting that aside. And it was definitely an easier journey for me than for other folks. I still hear about people that are struggling with that, about letting go of the vine when it comes to the technical side of things, not working tickets. Really, it's just you have to take a look and see what you could be doing versus what you are doing. And I think that's an important distinction that a lot of people don't stop in the moment to say, can my time right now be used more in a more valuable way?
There's a story I tell that I think is germane to this conversation. So I've said this before. I was at the place I worked for 19 years, Alvaca Networks. I was at their 40th business anniversary party, and the owner, Oli, was kind of talking, to his entire team about the growth of Genesis and Origins and the growth of the company. And I caught his eye, and he said, "Oh yeah, and then I made that common mistake of taking your best tech and promoting them to service manager," right? And I remember feeling like, wait, what does that mean? Right? But what he meant was it took a long time. He was kind of new at owning the business, and he didn't know how to teach me how to stop being a tech and start being a manager, and teach me how to be a leader there. So we struggled together for a lot of years. But I think I can remember the day that he must have gotten a business coach, and I could even picture myself walking into his office, and where he must have gotten the advice when I asked him, "Hey, what should I do about this problem?" that he needed to not tell me, he needed to ask me what I thought I should do about the problem. And since then, I've kind of learned that there's a bit of an art to it, where when your person that you're trying to train as a leader comes to you, or when you go to the owners and say, "Hey, I've got this problem, what do I do?" Right? Whenever you hear that, it should trigger one question. Well, what do you think? Right? And then no matter what you hear in a response, you only have one or two responses to that, which is "sounds great, run with it," or "have you thought about it?" Right? Have you thought about this particular scenario? And if you don't like what they said, or they need to think a little bit more, it's "have you thought about this other thing?" And then they'll go, "Oh, no, well, this is what I think I should do." And then it's "sounds great, run with it," or "have you thought about," right? You just stay in that "have you thought about" cycle until you agree with what they think that they should do. And what's really important about that is it does two things. It creates confidence in that person that they actually can think through things and make good decisions over time. But it also creates confidence in their leader that they can think through things and make good decisions. kind of if you stick with that. Well, what do you think, and have you thought about, or sounds great, run with it. So I don't know. Did you get that from Matt and David, or are you doing anything like that with your team?
Yeah, all the time, honestly. Specifically from Matt, since I report to him now directly. I don't interact with David as much anymore, um, in a professional capacity anyway. But yeah, Matt is very good about coming to me, and when I say, like as you said, I bring him an issue or something, and his response is, "Well, what do you think you should do?" And I can't even count the number of times where he has responded with, "Well, I trust you. Go do that. Right? See what happens." Like you said, exactly those things. And it's something that I work on as well as best I can. Um, with technical issues, which are the primary things that come my way. Oftentimes, I'm just relying on their expertise, so that just kind of comes naturally. But when it comes to the more ephemeral issues, right, the leadership type of things, I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I think I need to be doing that more, honestly.
Well, and I think it's really powerful, the response to that, because I think it would be very easy to say, okay, well, no, 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 don't do that. But I think the impact of shooting that down versus guiding someone through, I love that. Did you think about this, and kind of having them process it to come up with the answer, to think that, okay, yeah, run with it. I think it's really, really powerful. Now, Paul, in today's age, I can't get away with not asking a question about AI. So that's such a big topic to us right now. So my question to you is, can AI run a company right now?
Well, no, I can't run a company. And as a matter of fact, as we first started talking about AI, David, the president of CyberStreams, came to us and said, "Hey, I think what we need to be doing is really focusing on what humans are uniquely good at. You know, humans can't run I'm sorry, AI can't run an IT planning meeting. AI can't build those relationships with our clients. AI can't delight people in the ways that a human can." And so that's one area of our business that we've really been focusing on lately, which includes things, we rolled out a new program fairly recently where we have client appreciation lunches. You've probably heard or read somewhere in the past that oftentimes managers and leaders will spend too much time focusing on their underperforming employees rather than their star performers. Then their star performers feel neglected, they're not happy, and they eventually end up leaving. Well, I thought about that with our client base, and I was like, well, we should be showing our good clients a lot of love as well. And that's something, again, going back to the AI discussion, something we're good at. We can go do those things. So we started selecting clients at random that we enjoy. They bring us joy as a company. And so we go out there, we cater lunch for them, and we just hang out with no agenda other than just to show them some love. And so those are the types of things that we're focusing on primarily.
I gotta hold on. I gotta grab onto that one, because we've had some really good conversations, and I love that you said, "Do they bring us joy?" And I'm thinking, that's an interesting perspective. That's an interesting lens to look through when evaluating your staff, or your clients. Can you talk just a little bit about how you've used that in evaluating kind of your relationship with your clients?
Absolutely. It's really just it's not just me, right? It's not any one person at CyberStreams that they're bringing joy to. It's our entire organization. How do they interact with our help desk? How do they interact with our dispatcher? How do they react when things don't go well? Do they pay their bills on time? All of those types of things, add up to a good client, hopefully. And if they're not doing those things, then we tend to stop and ask ourselves, is it worth having this client, right? Is the cost greater than the benefit of having them? And there have been several times in the past we've said, no, that's just not the case. And so we went and had a conversation with the client and let them know, say, hey, these are the reasons why we're not really happy with our relationship. Maybe it's time for us to part ways. And sometimes we've been able to rehabilitate the client in those ways. Most of the time we haven't been able to, unfortunately. But we've let them go, and we've ushered them off to another MSP, and hopefully they're happy and we're happier for it.
Thank you.
I was looking at an article recently about the IQ test of AI, and specifically they were using ChatGPT-4. And an IQ test has the verbal side and the nonverbal side, right? The verbal IQ and what they call the performance IQ. On the verbal side, it's like a 140 or 155, depending on which test you look at, right? Which is well above, the average human at a 100. But on the performance side, the nonverbal part of the test, it can't really be tested. So that's the whole side of it that AI is still missing. So I do believe over time you'll see more and more of that happen. But for now, I don't think I'm worried about competing with AI for my leadership role.
Well, it's been, it's a challenge to stay on top of everything that's going on with AI, right? New companies are popping up left and right, trying to capitalize on what's going on, trying to understand which of those companies actually have a real product that's worth investing in. It's tough. It's a little scary. This whole thing kind of reminds me of, the .com era way back in the day. Who knows which of these companies are still going to be around in a couple of years? And so navigating that is a real challenge for leadership right now, right? That and automation.
Paul, is there anything else about leadership that comes to the top of mind that you'd like to share?
I think one of the most important things, we were talking about this morning actually during one of our training sessions, is communication, right? It's not just with the client, it's with your staff. I think that a lot of up-and-coming leaders don't communicate as much as they probably should. They don't just pick up the phone and call their staff and ask, hey, how are you doing? I'm not calling for any reason, just other than to check on you, right? Again, build those relationships with them and make sure that they understand that, again, you're there for them. You're there to support them and to really help them out in any way you can. And so having that open line of communication is so important.
Every
Very
time
well
I hear
put.
the word communication, I think, what we have here is a failure to communicate.
And how many problems you can point to that being the source of it is just bad communication. A lot of them.
So many stories of it. And you know what? I picked up the phone and I called them, or I sat down with them and we talked, and it's not an issue anymore. What we thought was or could have been bad was just solved by a conversation or that communication. That's great way of putting it. Now Paul, you had said something about peer group, but I'm going to put a pin in that. I want to come back to that. But first, why don't we take a moment to hear from Keith Marciano with another sales pitch.
Today on Sales Pitch, we're talking about building leadership teams, specifically building sales leadership teams. In baseball, it is key that they have a leadership team in place. You don't see the owner of a Major League Baseball team out on the field managing the players, do you? Well-run baseball teams have the owner managing the business side, while they hire leadership underneath them. They have an executive responsible for recruiting players, overseeing the scouting department and player personnel, while the manager of the team is on the field and is responsible for actually developing the players. So today's sales pitch is directed to MSP owners. Getting to the point of having a leadership team is a journey. As your IT services business begins to scale and your company improves, you'll want to begin to shift from you as the owner being involved in the day-to-day to working on the business and coming up with strategy and putting people around you that can do the day-to-day. You're also going to be at this point looking for good leaders and creating that leadership team. Typically at growth stage 2, the owner and the service manager are running the business, and we begin to focus on process development and growing the company. Growth stage 3 is when a leadership team begins to form and run the business and focusing on profitability and driving it. There are a lot of prerequisites to get to this point, but eventually you'll want to build a sales team and a true sales department. So let's touch all the bases on scaling up to get to the point of building a sales leadership team inside your MSP sales organization. 1, owner responsible for growing the business to start. End of the day, you must go out and get new business. Get in the business community and jumpstart the revenue. 2, get clutter off your plate. Plan to hire an administrator that can handle quotes, get orders from your clients, have them work with vendors, handle procurement. Hire an account manager, somebody that can be a client advocate, work with the satisfaction of your clients and the retainment of those clients. Get a marketing engine fine-tuned by outsourcing out to a marketing company that can help you start driving some business your way. 3, hire a sales hunter. This also means the business owner becomes the sales manager, so be prepared for that. Invest in this person. Develop them to focus on finding new logos and driving new reoccurring revenue. Then go hire a second one. Surround those salespeople with a sales engineer that can help them create scopes of work and handle the technical side of the interaction with the clients. 4, hire a sales manager to continue to build and develop the team. Hire a proven leader to do this. Not just your best salesperson, a sales leader. Once you get to this point, the owner will then be managing the sales manager and setting the goals for year-over-year growth with that person. No matter where you are in your growth journey, you need to look at leaders within your company to help execute your vision and reach your goals. So if you're looking to get to the next level and eventually work on building a sales team and building a leadership team around you, Pax8 Academy offers one-on-one coaching for business owners who are looking to scale their business and put best practices in place. We do this around coaching on operations, finance, and even sales. So invest in your company so that way you can focus on the long-term vision of putting good leaders around you. If you have questions about building a leadership team or any sales questions in general for watching my sales pitch, I hope to see you at Pax8 Beyond, June 9th through 11th in Denver, Colorado. I'll be there. Come find me. Ask some questions.
Great sales pitch, Keith. Really appreciate that. Now, Paul, we want to switch gears. You had talked about importance of peer groups earlier for you. So first of all, how would you describe what a peer group is to you?
You know, the wheel's already been invented. There's no reason to reinvent it, every time there's a new problem. And, service managers and other folks just in general in the industry can feel like you're on an island sometimes, especially if you're the only person in your organization doing that role. But there are hundreds or thousands of other people out there who are doing the exact same thing with the same struggles and the same problems you're having every single day. So peer groups let you tap into that as a resource to help you and also for you to help them, solve those problems, because I've solved a lot of problems on my own that I can share that knowledge with others and they can do the same thing with me. It's just a great resource that helps us all grow and learn so much faster than we could on our own.
Yeah. And you are a member of a Pax8 peer group. You also facilitate a group for service managers. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a member and as a facilitator.
Well, first of all, it's a blast. I love everybody that I attend peer groups with, either facilitating or members. I've built a lot of good relationships with people there. We continually talk offline and out of the meetings, get to know each other well. As a matter of fact, I've got some swag here that we've all created from our peer groups. It's Chris Kaiser. I've got a sticker here. We've got this shirt that we made for everybody. I think Rex, you have one too. Want to share yours there? So we're trying to turn Chris Kaiser into a celebrity, whether or not he likes it. And so just that camaraderie, of people, of like-minded individuals, people again that are going through the same struggles you are. I think it just builds strong bonds where you can, switch in and out of work so easily when you're having conversations. I can't speak highly enough about peer groups and how much they've helped me grow as a leader and as a person.
And Rex has experience too.
Yeah, so my first experience with a peer group was in 2004. So this is 24. So oh my God, that was 20 years ago. And that's actually where I met Ken Sponsler and Stephanie Heflin. I'm gonna have to let them know how old they are. But it was just amazing how some people in the group had their kind of bar lower than mine, and I thought my bar was pretty high. But suddenly I'm in with a group of people where their bar is way higher than mine, right? So I've got the ability to learn from people on certain aspects of the way they work, and the ability to teach other people on certain aspects of the way they work, and kind of help the whole peer group level up a little bit. Just an amazing experience. One of the top four things that changed the direction of my career in a good way.
Yeah, and I would say, going back to what I was saying earlier, in addition to the fact that other people have solved the same problem you're facing right now, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Maybe you've solved the problem, but it may not be the best way to do it. And you learn from somebody else that, hey, there's a better way to do this. So yeah, just learning about all those different ways is great. Love that.
And in some ways, your peer group now is leading the way for the industry on solving some unsolved problems, like how are we using AI, or how are we doing some of the, combating some of the new security threats, or like your peer group is probably on the forefront of trying to solve some problems, but now you got a group think.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way, and that's a lot of pressure. Thanks, Rex.
That'd be the topic of our next meeting. I'll be sure to bring that up, Paul.
Pretty sure we call that leadership.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you're in a service executive kind of group, people with roles that are responsible for service management, that have a very close tie, and either on leadership, most of the members are on a leadership team, or work closely with leadership and ownership, set the strategy and vision. How often is leadership a topic of your peer group conversations, and what kind of things are you talking about in the peer group around leadership?
As an actual topic, I'm not sure that it comes up very often, like specifically leadership, but it's something that kind of permeates every topic we talk about, right? Every time we approach a situation, we're looking at it from that leadership angle of how can we be leading from the front? How can we make sure we're setting people up for success and holding us and them accountable and such? So, I think every single thing we discuss has that element of leadership built into it, because that's what we're here to do. Is to lead, the teams that we have, and to help them succeed with the problems they're experiencing, with the tools they're trying to implement, etc. So,
yeah, okay. Go ahead, Rex.
I was going to say there's two big plateaus that I see. MSPs grow to a certain point, and then their revenue growth just plateaus for sometimes a matter of years. Before they figure out the leadership challenge, and then it can grow pretty quickly, usually to another plateau where it stalls again for a number of years. And the first plateau just exactly coincides with basically it's the rule of 7, right? No manager should have more than 7 direct reports. You can push it to 10 or 11, but you're not doing a great job being a leader at that point. So the owner starts the business and grows it. They get to 7, 8, 9 employees, and they got to really pick a service manager, right? And then usually it's around a higher number 3 or 4, where I ask, if I'm coaching them early enough, I try to get them to think about a different kind of person, somebody that has leadership qualities that they're hiring instead of just a technician, so they can develop them into that service manager by the time they get to 7 or 8, 9 employees. And then it happens again, somewhere around that 15, 16 employee mark. And then it happens again right around that 30 to 35 employee mark, where you have to start developing another layer of leadership in the company. And really it's never too early to start developing those leaders. So Paul, you're kind of headed toward that next plateau right now. Like, is your peer group talking about the fact that any of you are at a plateau or approaching a plateau, and what's next?
Yeah, we've started exploring within both of my peer groups, actually, different methods for how we might address that plateau, right? Some of that involves splitting teams, right? So for instance, my title is Director of Service and Support. We have a service and support team And in theory, I could start developing leaders on both sides of that, on the help desk and then in the engineering team, for instance. Another method that people are looking at are pods, where you start, appointing like an account manager in each pod that acts as a leader within that small group. So yeah, we talked about that quite a bit, and the challenges of developing the next generation of leadership, like you said, right? It's not as easy as just grabbing your best performing tech and hoping that works out, because oftentimes it doesn't, right? You need to find the people with those leadership qualities that you're looking for.
What are some of the things that would make someone successful in a peer group, or what are some of the areas, like who are the best candidates to find value, or what are some of the takeaways you think that set somebody up for success in a peer group?
Honestly, it's engagement. Be prepared when you come in. Be ready to talk, ask questions, comments, right? Answer questions. Be engaged outside of the peer group within whatever tool you're using to communicate. I think that engagement is the key to success, right? The peer group that I'm a member of, we often are held up as kind of a gold standard. At least we hold ourselves up to as a gold standard of peer groups because of how engaged everybody is, right? We all get along. We all are engaged all the time. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's funny how I think that openness and that candor, that vulnerability, I think, is a great word as well. I joke, I tell people it's not a mutual admiration society. Let's not just get together and tell each other how pretty we are, but let's challenge each other in a supportive way. We want each other to succeed, but we also are emotionally removed from that, business or that situation, and can sometimes see things that we can't in the forest and the trees. So I think that's really powerful. It's fun to watch. Now, we have a video clip that I would like to show from your experience in while you were in San Diego when we had accountability meetings there earlier in the year. So if you're okay, if we could bring that up and show that, I think it'd be great.
The people who think they can't get anything from Academy are wrong, because there's just so much they have to offer. There's the instructor-led courses, the written courses, the peer groups, all of it. I feel like the people that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis, both in the group as well as with PAX 8, they want me to succeed. They want all of us to succeed. That's one of the great things about PAX 8 in general, is that everybody that I talk to seems to want their clients to succeed, which is great. And it shows through the Academy.
Paul, thank you for that. I love when partners are willing to get on camera and talk about their experiences, especially when they're positive. So thank you for that. I think you also are involved in some of the one-on-one coaching offerings from Academy. Do you have just a couple of comments on how that's been working for you?
I'm sorry, the one-on-one coaching or
Yeah.
PAX 8 Academy coaching. Yeah, we were involved with the PAX 8 Academy coaching, and man, did it help us mature quite a bit, right? Bringing all sorts of best practices in and really showing us where we could be improving. And my favorite part of that coaching was not that it was it's not our way or the highway, right? It's very much, let's show you what we think is going to work, and then make it your own, tailor it to you, and then deploy it and see how things work out. It's been one of the better aspects of that, just that adaptability. And we are not the same company today that we were 2-3 years ago because of that coaching, and it's been phenomenal. So I really appreciate everything PAX 8's done in that regard, not just with that coaching, but with the peer groups and these.
Well, I think it's there, but I think it's really your engagement. That's a great word that you said earlier, was your choice to engage and to listen, to be vulnerable and be open, and to implement changes that sometimes aren't easy, or to take that feedback is really powerful. But I am just so thrilled to see your success and growth, both you and your company through this. That's huge. So we have this little event. You might have heard of this, Paul, PAX 8 Beyond. I remember we hanging out with you last year. Are you planning to go to Beyond this year, coming up?
I wouldn't miss it for the world. I had a blast last year. Honestly, I remember I talked to several people about PAX 8 Beyond and the fact that, you know, coming out of, what was it before, Wingman, before that, and into Beyond, it the level of maturity of that conference was just heads and shoulders above almost any other industry conference that I've been to. And so I was deeply appreciative of that. It felt great. The organization was great. It was a great time. Learned a ton. Highly recommended. It's well worth your time and your effort.
Appreciate that. Very much looking forward to seeing you there. Paul, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything that you didn't get a chance to speak on before?
No, I think I'm okay. I think I'm good.
Okay.
Wow,
Well,
we covered it all.
that's absolutely amazing. Let's write that down. It could be first.
Nothing else to talk about.
Thank you.
We're good.
Thank you so much for being here, Paul. We really appreciate your insights. Thank you for your partnership and your engagement. Appreciate you being here. And we're going to move over to final thoughts.
All right. So, final thoughts. Leadership is probably the key area that stops companies from growing. They grow, they hit these plateaus, and if they're not developing the leaders, they just stagnate. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a call with an owner where I ask, who do you have in mind to promote into a leadership role? And they kind of look at their team and they're like, nobody, right? I hired them all for their technical skills, not their ability to become and be a leader. And so I have to break some bad news. Look, it's going to be a couple of years of developing a person into a leadership role, and we need to make that your next hire. And it's sad to see that happen, but then I kind of get the joy of getting to work with them and help them grow into a leadership role. Chris, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, this is a critical topic for business and growth. You talked about plateaus, and I think this is absolutely where a lot of businesses hit that. And I think that for me, it's really kind of putting that time and effort into developing leadership. It's not just to turn on. It's not just hire somebody and hand it off to them. It's really all that grooming or delegating, training, managing and building together. And I think there's a lot of effort to it. And I just really would encourage people to think about the future of their business and who that leadership team, other than, the one person, the one owner, the one whatever, and what does that team look like, and really start to build towards it. So critical for that continued growth. So can agree with you more, Rex. Well, thank you for watching. Be sure to check us out next week. Our guest will be PAX 8's Adam Hanneman, and we'll be talking about how to evaluate a product before you buy it. Very timely around, the Beyond. And remember, we're live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and on demand always. Don't forget to subscribe and like us on your YouTube channel. And Rex, I'm going to ask you to close us out.
I'd like you to think to yourself, what are you doing today to develop your leaders of tomorrow? Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.